friend. Welcome to Wild and Waking, a sacred space for the woman unraveling what no longer fits, remembering the truth that's always lived inside her, reclaiming her joy, her voice, her power, and rising fully, fiercely, and without apology. I'm your host, Emily Rushell, and together we'll explore what it means to live in alignment, lead with soul, and awaken a life of abundance, authenticity, and purpose. Let's begin. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Wild and Waking. Today, I am giddy for this episode, or should I say episodes. I am joined by Annie, who is just a wealth of information specifically in the world of astrology. And I have so many questions for her and so many questions from you to ask of her. I know specifically on my Coven group calls, we have been getting really curious about astrology. For me personally, when it comes to kind of understanding myself, I started with the Enneagram and then really dove into human design over the last couple of years. And so astrology feels like the next territory. And I conceptually understand. But anytime I hear someone talking about it or even get on Instagram and threads and people are like, moon rising, nodes, I don't know what we're talking about. It feels like we're speaking Arabic. And so I'm bringing Annie on in a 2-part episode series. First, what we're going to dive into today is going to be actually doing a reading through my chart so that you can follow along. I'll have her, tell us where we can pause and go and look at her favorite resource. You can kind of follow along with us with your own. She can give you some context as to what's going on, what things mean, what to look out for, where to go next. So we're going to dive into all of that. And so I'm personally extremely giddy to learn more about myself and this tool. And then we're going to really dive into ancestral healing, mother wounds, parenting, really how to take this information and apply it to it's all applicable to real life, but the work that we're doing, what's laying beneath the surface, how we're doing generational healing, and ultimately how we're raising the next generation. So I am delighted. Annie, welcome to Wild and Waking.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'm so excited. Everything you just said, I'm like, yes, 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 yes. It's just in alignment. I love it.
Okay, so first give us some context as to who you are, where you are, how you got into the work that you're doing today. When did your love or interest or passion for astrology begin?
Yeah, so my love for astrology has been lifelong because I've always been someone similarly to you. I wanted to do all of the personality tests and the Enneagram and the Myers-Briggs and all the things because I've been a black sheep since I was born. So I just kind of never fit in and always felt like there was something different with me. So I was looking for answers, right? So I've always loved it, but it was just still fluff pop astrology from the teen magazines back in the day, teen Vogue and horoscopes. So my real initiation was about 6 years ago. My second child was born and I had very severe postpartum depression after she was born. And it just completely shattered my reality. It literally put me into my dark night of the soul, spiritual awakening. I used to work in pharmaceutical marketing and I realized that it just did not align with me at all. I completely was ooh, this industry is profits over people. So literally my whole identity, my whole world collapsed. And so and then there was the state of the world as well. This was at the beginning of COVID, right at the beginning. So I was oh my God, what have I done? I just brought another child into this world. It's a fucking shit show, hyperventilating. So I actually booked an astrology reading for some insights, just have some peace of mind. I was where's the future going? Is there a future? The astrology is going to tell me what the future is, right? So I get on and phenomenal reading. And she just gave me so much peace of mind. And she said to me, oh, you're coming up on a really important work phase. You're going to meet a spiritual mentor in the next couple of weeks. And it's going to completely change your career path and everything that you're doing. So I was okay. So that was on my radar. And a couple of weeks after, a friend sent me a Facebook group and she was oh, check this out. It's all about star seeds. And so that's how I actually found my energy healing teacher. And so I got into her free challenge or whatever. It completely changed my life, made so many things click into place. I had one energy healing session with my teacher and it literally changed me overnight. Postpartum depression wise, I went from being a pessimist to an optimist, completely hating motherhood to finding the beauty in it. Like it literally changed me. So I was like, I need to know this modality. Like I was like, this is amazing. I need to know how to do this. So I started training with her. So I did 3 years of training, like hundreds of hours. So I was actually an energy healing practitioner first. And then
Mm.
2 years ago, so 2023, I was doing some past life work and I was in my past lives and I realized that I had been an astrologer in past lives. So I was like, oh, this makes so much sense why I've always felt called to astrology. And so a couple of days after that, I had the download to basically combine the two together because that's it. With my understanding of karmic contracts and why we choose our hardships and all these things, I was like, oh my God, like the map is right there in your chart. Like, I think that we choose, that's it, moms who maybe don't love us, right? Or absent fathers, like all these things. I think from a soul perspective, my belief is that we do choose these things for a bigger purpose. And it's like literally the manual is there, the bigger purpose is all written. So I was like, oh my God, I can combine the two. And so astrology gives me a map for healing. So it's like I get on with clients and I'm like, okay, let's talk about this mother wound here. And then it's just like opens up the can of worms like so much easier, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up here.
I am obsessed with people who take like seemingly unrelated disciplines, not that they're not related, right? But seemingly unrelated things and are like, wait a second, where are the dots that connect? And like, how do I bring this together? And then boom, like there is your next evolution.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's totally my chart in action. I have an Aquarius stellium, so I'm all about innovating things. Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll tell us what that means before too long. Okay. For anyone who's like, okay, I'm here, I'm ready, I'm interested, Annie, where are your favorite resources to download a chart?
So I love using astro-seek.com. I just think their interface is very clean and they break it all down. Like if you scroll down, you can read about each placement. So I really, really love that. Another one that's really like beginner friendly is the Chani app. So Chani Nicholas, she's like really well-known astrologer. Her app is like very user-friendly. And her book, oh my God, everybody has to read her book called You Were Born for This. And it's just so brilliantly written. It's like almost like a workbook in and of itself. Like she breaks down each placement in each chapter and makes you, that's it, write it out. And like you read it specifically for your chart. It's like almost like a very, very interactive. But that book is just really, really great for like beginners.
I absolutely love that. Okay, so let's start really high level. Explain astrology to someone who is dabbling into this for the very first time.
So I love to explain astrology as a language. And so I thought it was funny that you're like, this is like a foreign language to me. It really is a language. And I like to say that it's the language from your soul, from your higher self. So basically, in terms of my spiritual journey and everything that I've learned, I think that souls, we make plans before we incarnate. And basically, the plan is like written here in this chart. And so the astrology is the language of the bigger picture plan. That's like your birth chart. And then also what's happening in the moment now. So when you see on Instagram, when people are like, oh, full moon this, new moon this, or Mercury is in retrograde, that's the astrology of like the moment, which is also, I think, pre-planned and just kind of like, yeah, like an instruction manual, which is kind of like what's going to happen, the very specific activating time periods. Like we can see in charts when people get married, when they're going to have children, career changes, all of these things. So I think they're all predetermined. So I really think that astrology is the language for your higher self. So that's it, because that's, we have amnesia. We don't realize like, why did I choose this? Why would I incarnate to this shit show, right? And so Soul knew that we would have amnesia when we would incarnate. So she was like, here you go. Here's my plan. Here's the manual.
Amazing. Okay, I feel like any other questions I have are just going to be better answered by diving in.
Yeah, go for it.
So, okay, we have my chart pulled up. What do all of these things mean? What do these symbols mean? What do these numbers mean? Walk us through it.
Okay, so I always read, again, so I take a karmic lens. So I always like to look at what is your north node. And basically the north node is the one that looks like a little horseshoe. And this is your destiny path. So this is what soul was like, okay, this is what I incarnated for. This is like the big kind of plan. And so you have an Aquarius north node. It's in your sixth house. And so basically that tells me that your soul incarnated to be an innovator and a change maker. Like these are all Aquarius topics and themes. Aquarius is all about making the collective better. Like everybody rises together and then really like innovating things, making a change from a place of innovation. And in the sixth house, it's all about being of service, but also our day-to-day like lives and our health. And so I feel like just with the conversations and the things that I've seen from what you're doing, I'm like, oh, you're really in your purpose because you're bringing these innovative conversations and wanting to make change on a collective level, but also making it really applicable, right? And that's what's very like specific about the sixth house. It's like, it's very much like your day to day. It's like, it's applicable astrology, really. And so then the rest of the chart, the way that I like to explain to my clients is like, okay, you have this North Node purpose. The rest of the planets, so those are all the symbols that we see. The rest of the planets are the toolbox and also the life challenges that we need to experience to bring us closer to this life path. Okay, so what I mean by that is, again, our souls choose our hardships and the things that we're going to go through kind of like as an initiation. So that's it. Some of those challenges, like things that we see with Saturn and with Chiron, like those help you towards your path. So basically all of the planets, they're like the toolbox that soul was like, okay, I need this to basically achieve my purpose and make it easier for me. So I will dive into kind of like the big three, but if you have any questions there.
I am just soaking it all in.
Okay. Amazing. Okay, so oftentimes you'll hear someone in astrology, this very big concept of like the big three. So that's your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising sign. So our sun sign is the most common astrology. When people are like, I'm a Scorpio, or that's like, I'm an Aries, they usually refer to their sun sign. And that's specific to like the day that you're born. I mean, all of this is specific to the day that you're born, but what I mean is like everybody who's born in that monthly period, they're all Scorpio suns, for example. But then that's why you have, why is one Scorpio so different than another Scorpio? Well, that's where we have the other layers that come in, like the moon. So the moon sign is your emotional world. It's like your inner world. It's also a big part of like your inner dialogue, like what it sounds like. And then your rising sign is, sometimes people in astrology will say that it's like a mask and how other people see you. I don't like that interpretation. I see it more as it's the lens through which you see the world, which obviously affects your behaviors and your reactions, which dictates how people see you and react to you.
So it's almost like the first one, the sun sign. That reminds me of human design, being like a generator, a Manny-Gen, like a reflector, things like that. It's kind of like, here's your overarching category, but it's really all of these other pieces that are showing up that guide how you move through the world in that way.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful.
And then we also bring in the level of houses, which is where most people tend to get confused. So when you're looking at a chart, it kind of looks like a pie, right? It has like all these lines and looks like little pie pieces. So each pie piece is a house that it's called, and it's a different area of your life. Okay, so the first house is your house of yourself. The second house is your house of like money and your worth and etc. And so where the planets fall, those are basically like the main areas of your life where these themes are going to play out, and they're going to have like a really big impact on your life, basically. This was the kind of the other layer of it. But to put it to applicable and for your your audience and your listeners to really know you, like your big three, you have your sun is in Aries, and then your moon is in Pisces, and you're a Leo rising. So for me, what stands out is that you have two of those three placements that are fire signs. So I feel like that's what makes you just very like the kind of like extroverted and like outgoing, and you have like that bubbly personality. But then that Pisces moon is like what brings in like that spiritual side, and that like intuition and like that creativity, that like softness. But sometimes what happens is that it's only the people closest to us who see our moon sign. So I wonder if that feels true for you, where it's like for most people, they probably see you as like your Aries, Leo, like fireness, but then the people who are really closer to you, they see more of that softer side of you.
It's interesting because I think if you had explained this to me prior to the work that I'm doing now, I would not have related to that Pisces moon sign, like intuitive, deep feeling stuff. Like I feel like I was just so turned off and disconnected from that. And then as I've gone through this journey over the last, since 2019 or so, that has really been like the evolution of the work that I'm doing. And even like the most relevant over the last year, 18 months or so, in like really diving into and exploring and embracing and showing that depth and vulnerability.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm really curious to ask you if some of that like resistance at first, and you didn't want to be that part, was there a part of that that is related to maybe your mom and maybe not necessarily wanting to be exactly like her, or having some type of like disconnect with that intuitive side?
I would say in general, and my mom would totally say this. She'd probably be mortified that I'm talking about it on a podcast, but she has said like, "Oh, I'm not like Emily. I don't feel feelings." Like I was never modeled what that looks like.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. Because that's it. So the moon also represents our mom. And so that's it. It's super interesting that your mom doesn't feel that emotional connection. And so I can understand that, yeah, you would feel it was never modeled for you as well, right? And then obviously, yeah, with fire signs, I'm a fire sign as well. We don't typically like to, we just kind of like, let's move on, right? Like we don't want to dwell in it. So I totally
Right.
get that.
Yeah, I would say for most of my life, like people have described me as like, like sunshine in a bottle or like an energy drink in human form, like very extroverted, very confident presenting, very, vibrant. And it's really been over the last couple of years of like diving into the depths that I have even explored, much less been able to show that like other side and been like, oh, there's so much more happening. And I wonder if that's what you said, the third, the rising, that like mask is like that has really been the work of the past several years of like understanding and removing these masks that I didn't even know that I had created over time.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah, what you described is exactly that Leo rising. It's like Leo is the fun one. It's like, yeah, creative, it's joy, it's that childlike like play. And it's just, plus with Aries as well, like Aries is also that innocence. I can see that lightness, right? But it's just so interesting that you'd say that it's kind of like, yeah, how you were portraying like up until now, almost like like as a mask, because some of the Leo kind of shadows and the darker side of it is always being the fun one and the happy one, and like
Yes.
feeling like you have to perform, and that like love and appreciation is like, well, you're always the fun and the bubbly one. So then if you come and you show up to like the friend thing and you're like, oh man, it's heavy, they're like, what like what do you mean, right? And so it's that pressure to always be on and that like perform and be the one who's lifting everybody up.
Yeah, I've been in this year has just been a very different season for me. And I even said at a retreat I was recently at the very end, reflecting, I'm like, I just feel sad that I feel like I was a version of myself here that's different than how I typically show up. And I was like feeling some dissonance around like, oh, I don't feel like you've really got to see that side of me. I've been in like such a different headspace. And they're like, no, but that's okay. That's a good thing. Like we're here for all of it. You don't have to be that person that you have always identified to be in order to be worthy of holding space here. And that is hard.
Yeah, I can totally see that as a Leo rising. That makes sense.
Okay, so those are the big three. So if someone is looking at their chart, what are they looking for to figure those out?
Yeah. So basically, then that's where you have to start reading the symbols, and they're always written. That's like on AstroSeek, it's written right beside. So it says, so the sun, it's like the one that's look like a circle with a little dot in the middle, and then basically how you read charts, it's pretty simple. Once you'll have gotten it, it's basically on the outside of the wheel, we have the zodiac symbols, like the zodiac glyphs. And so that tells you that which is Aries and Taurus and etc. So what I always say to my clients is like, so you're looking for the symbol. So the sun, the circle with the one in the middle. So then you find it, and then you look to the outer wheel of it, and you look to the zodiac sign that's there. So yours is Aries. And then the number that's in the middle, that's the house. So then it's the eighth house. So you're an Aries sun in the eighth house. And then the moon sign, well, it's the one that looks like a little moon. So then same thing. So moon, and then we look to the sign that's on the outside. Okay, well, then we see it, that's Pisces. And then on the inside, it's seventh. So you're Pisces moon in the seventh house. And so the AstroSeek, it just like breaks it all down to tells you kind of like a legend of that's it. What is the planet? And then that's really all it is. So you find the planet, you look to the outside wheel. Okay, that's the zodiac glyph. It tells me which sign it is. And the number on the inner wheel, that's the house.
So where is the rising? Where does that come in? Because I don't see that word specifically.
Yeah, so the rising sign, that's the one that doesn't look like a planet. So that's the one that says, it's the very first line at the start of the first house. It says it's thicker, it's black, and it says ASC. And so that one, you take that line all the way out, and then you see it. It's at 29 degrees of Leo, basically. So the rising sign is the very, very first, like the first line that starts the first house. The symbol that's on the outside of that, that's the sign of your rising sign.
Okay. I'm not going to pretend like I totally understand what you're saying, but let's keep going. And I'm sure that someone's laughing along with me, like, okay, I'm kind of tracking. Let's continue. This is gonna take a while to digest, but I'm here for it.
I totally get it. Okay, so those are like the basics. Okay, then I'm going a layer kind of deeper of okay, well, how do you like work with the chart? And this is where I feel like astrology gets really applicable. As then we look to the different planets, so Venus, Mars, and Mercury. And so Mercury is your planet of communication. And so that really, I mean, game changer. I literally have a freebie on this because it's like communication mishaps can really be mitigated when you understand. So it's like your Mercury sign is in Aries. So you're someone who's probably like very like direct, like let's get to the point, like fast, like we don't want like the whole like, thing this long. But it's like, say someone who maybe has their Mercury in Cancer, they like their communication a little softer. So someone who's just like direct and blunt like you is just like, whoa, like I need a little more nurturing around this, right? So we can really mitigate so many communication, like miscommunications by understanding this. So that's a Mercury sign. And then your Venus is the planet of love. It's also a planet that's associated with money. It tells us about our self-worth. And I really like to use it because it tells you about your love language and really how you need to be, that's it, like loved and nurtured for it to really like land. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept. Like for me, love languages completely changed everything. Like me and my spouse realized that we had different love languages and we were making it a projection on the other person. Like I'm acts of service. And he's like, you're such an only child, little princess. Like you want things done for you. And I'm like, that's my love language. And his love
Yeah.
language is physical touch. And I'm like, you're so freaking needy. You're just like always need me to touch you and hug you. And like, isn't it enough to say that I love you? He's like, no, I need a hug. And so we realized that that's it. We were just like projecting onto each other and misinterpreting. And just, we didn't have like the same love language line, right? So yours is Venus is in Aquarius. So I would think that your love languages is, I would say, would probably be maybe like quality time or maybe acts of service. Am I right?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
tracks.
It tracks, yeah.
But you said that's related to like money and prosperity and stuff too. So how does that show up?
Yeah, Venus, yeah, absolutely. So basically, well, Venus it's our planet of money, but in terms of, so with like business astrology, it's how we attract money and how we magnetize it to us. So yeah, so it's like your Venus being in Aquarius, it's like, yeah, you really attract money when things can be, that's innovative and different, when they're helpful for the collective, not just like one individual person, but when they're also really applicable. That's what I was saying before. Like it has to like, that's it, not just like abstract main concepts, which can also be like an Aquarius thing, but because it's in your sixth house, if it can be really applicable and make a difference for people's day-to-day lives, then those are the ways that and then that's it. You probably attract like the cycle breakers and the black sheep and the people who never really fit in because they're just way ahead of the curve. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. Okay, so I said Mercury, I said Venus. Okay, and then Mars. Mars is our planet of like action and willpower. It's also like our anger. And so then that basically tells me like, yeah, what motivates you to take action? Like this has been a game changer for me with my kids because it's like they're not motivated necessarily by the same things that I am, right? And so that's just been so helpful for me to realize like, no, this is actually what motivates them. So yours is also in Aquarius in your sixth house. And so that's it. You are like, yeah, quite literally motivated by like making a difference and having that purpose bigger than you. I feel like maybe if you kind of disconnect from your purpose and you're kind of like the why, then that's probably where you would fall into like lack of willpower, maybe even a little depressy. Like you really need to be plugged into something that's bigger than you.
100%. I have never been a person that's like motivated by money necessarily. Like I was an elementary school teacher. I worked for a nonprofit. I was a summer camp counselor. Like I've always been motivated by impact and like bigger mission, bigger purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That makes so much sense. Okay. So those are kind of like the basics of like the blueprint. Then I start looking at the next level of just kind of like information, which is looking at there's two more. So the first one is those soul challenges and the things that have to do with that growth. And then there's the generational planets. So with generational planets, this is when everybody who's born at a certain time period has the same period of planets. So a really common one is like millennials. It's like both you and I, we have Pluto and Scorpio. So that's a generational planet. And I just love looking at generational planets, especially from, which we could talk about more after, but from that ancestral perspective and understanding why people are the way they are. So it's like we're literally having this conversation and we want to break generational patterns because that's literally Pluto and Scorpio. Pluto and Scorpio is like, I smell your BS. I see all of this. It's like the world is on fire and y'all are like, let's go to our 9 to 5 and keep making money for the capitalist machine. And us millennials are like, what are you drinking or smoking? Because like, we're not on the same page here, right? But if you look at like their generation, so the generation right before us, they have Pluto and Libra. So they're quite literally about keeping the peace and not wanting to disrupt the status quo. And like that harmony is very important, right? And then it's like most of us were raised or we have the influence of the baby boomers, which have their Pluto is in Leo. And it's more like they're really concerned with like appearances, and like doing things like you got to bring honor to our family, right? Like don't like you make a mistake, you bring shame. And that's all very like Leo coded. So generational planets just help us to understand kind of like where people come from and why they're the certain way, which I think is just like, I mean, it's a gold mine for deconditioning yourself, right? And realizing like what's not. So I guess I'll talk about generational planets because I'm already there. So that's Pluto. So Pluto is all about transformation. That's it, that death and rebirth. And Pluto is really like where you have power in your chart if you can, that's it, overcome, like that's it, the shame and the all of that conditioning, right? So it's like your Pluto, like I said, it's in Scorpio, so very much about breaking the patterns and things like that. But it's in your third house. So that third house is all about communication. And it's quite literally being like a messenger. So again, it's like your power being the messenger for this, right? For this, having this conversation and bringing it to light. But again, like, you're saying like, oh my God, my mom would probably be like mortified that I'm saying this, right? It's overcoming that, like, what will people think, right? Like that was a big one for me too. I talk about conditioning and things about my upbringing all the time. And it was a big thing. I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm airing out like family laundry, right?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it's like, we have to share our stories. There's just so much power in that, right? And then the other generational planets, so we have Uranus and then we have Neptune as well. So Uranus is the planet of kind of like disruption and just like changes, things that come like quickly. For me in a personal chart, it's not something that I always work with. It's more so like if you have a transit, so that's like the astrology of the now, because like I said, since it's a generational planet, it's just like if you have, Uranus kind of like on your moon, it would make sense to expect something like to happen or just whatever. The Neptune, though, Neptune I really like working with because yes, Neptune is a generational planet. Everybody has it. But from a psychic and intuitive lens, it gives us a lot of information. So that's what I like working with it. And so Neptune really tells you about, that's it, your psychic gifts and that psychic connection. And so your Neptune is in Capricorn. So I wonder if, do you, and maybe not the label itself, but do you resonate with like the concept of being like an empath and really like feeling energies and stuff in your body?
Yes. Yeah, that is something I've been exploring, especially recently. In September, I got Reiki attuned, and I feel like a lot of things started to tune or to turn on. I just started listening to this book, The Art of Psychic Reiki, Developing Your Intuitive and Empathetic Abilities for Energy Healing. And there was so much in it around being an empath and like the way that translated to Reiki healing that was like, oh, I see that a lot in myself. I'm starting like a lot of the things she's talking about, I see in my son. And so just even, within the past couple of months, being able to tune into that in a really specific, tangible way. I would say over the past couple of years, I have started to understand and own the idea of being an intuitive more. After years of like coaching and facilitating, people being like, you just know what to say. Like, it's almost like you know what I'm thinking before I know what I'm thinking, or you know exactly what kind of question that's going to like hurt so good and get me right to where I need to go. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I'm just, have good pattern recognition or something. But over the past couple of months, that started to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, amazing. Like good pattern recognition, or also being a Pisces moon and a Chiron in Cancer. And that's it. Having that, bringing it all really grounded with like Neptune and Capricorn. That's it. With Neptune and Capricorn, that it's a generation that is like, very empathetic, very much feeling it in our bodies and just like intuitive. So it's like, right, like the generation of kids now, they're being born with like Neptune and Pisces. So it's like they're even like extra psychic. Like they're just like born psychic, you know? They're just like tuned in. It's like I like to explain Neptune as that like psychic radar, basically. So those are the generational planets. And then that's it. The last layer that I was saying is the way that I see it karmically, it's kind of like those wounds, like the things that we're going to grow through, really. So that's Saturn and Chiron as well. So Saturn is our planet of responsibility and restriction, but it's also from a family astrology karmic perspective, it's also associated with our father line. So always look at Saturn for like father line insights. So yours is in Saturn is in Capricorn. It's interesting, it's in your fifth house. So I wonder if your dad and your father line is just kind of like, just like very like work driven. I mean, just like not a lot of playing, just like all work, very much driven by that's it, that money and just like the classic workaholics really, and not having a lot of time for like being present and in the moment and like playing, even family time. Like fifth house is like children and all. So I mean, I see you nodding. Yeah.
Well, I think there's some extenuating circumstances that would affect like the way I would describe my own dad in relation to that. Some disability, some addiction, some things. But sometimes I think about like who he would have been in the absence of these other hands that he was dealt. So I'm even going back a couple of generations in that line, and I can kind of see where that could make sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And so interesting that you would mention that about, like addictions, because your Saturn is actually making there's like a line, it's a blue line, it's called a sextile, but we're not even gonna go there. But it's just like it's making a connection to your moon in Pisces. And yeah, when we see Pisces connections, we often see addictions and like dissociation and things like that. So that just like that makes a lot of sense. But okay, side note though, the lines are basically, I think that's where a lot of people get lost. And they're called aspects basically. And it's how the planets talk to each other and how they work together. So sometimes they'll like favorably work together. When we have blue lines and green lines, they basically support one another. And then when we have red lines, they're more challenging. So they can be like opposites. So it's literally that like tug of war between two things, or that's it. It's a square, it's a challenge, but it really just gives us, again, more context as to like why soul chose these things and all that. But it's just like, very confusing astrology. And I think there's already so much to work with just in like I think my work is just kind of like beginner friendly because it's just very much based on like the archetypes. I really work with, like archetypes. That's it, to see how it runs in families and conditioning and all of that stuff. So there's already so much to like gather without even going into all the lines. But I wanted to specify just because I made a comment to it.
So those are you're talking about the lines that we would see in the very middle.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they're basically, it's like how the planets kind of talk together. Like an analogy that I really like using, it's like, let's say your birth chart is just like, it's the overall play of like the movie. Okay. So you have this like movie, this whole story, right? And then each house is kind of like a different scene in the movie. And then the planets, they're like the characters, right? And the archetypes are, so like Leo, Aries and all that, they're the archetypes that those actors, the players are going to take on. And then the aspects, so the lines between each other is it's like who's what, right? Like you have like your mom and your dad, and like some people could be related and siblings. So it's like how do they work kind of like together?
What that sparks for me, and this is a level of the Enneagram I never fully got into, but like in the Enneagram, you have your main number, you have your wings, but then there's also these lines between them of like in stress, you lean into this, or in times related to wealth, like there's kind of these connection points. I like the movie analogy. That actually makes sense for both of those.
Amazing.
Okay, so then when you're talking about, and maybe you're going to get into this next, so if there's something we need to hit on first, by all means, but like the nodes, the Chiron?
Yeah, Chiron.
I hear those words all of the time as if they're very important. I don't know what they mean.
Yeah, they are. So the nodes, we basically talked a bit of, so the north node, like I was saying, that's like your destiny path. The south node is super interesting. It's like it's like an upside down horseshoe, basically. It looks like a U. I work with the South Node a lot because it talks about our past and our past lives, and how basically, I don't like when pop astrology says that like, oh, you have to leave your South Node behind. For me, it's really more like this is what you've mastered in a past life. And so you can use it to help you on your North Node destiny path. So like I was saying, we were talking about like your North Node destiny is really to like uplift the collective and stuff. And so your South Node is right across, it's in Leo. And so that Leo charisma and that like ease with people, right? That energy is not things that you need to leave behind. Like, no, that's what helps you to move the collective along, right? So people actually like listen to you and they care, right? So it's like in a past life, I would say I'm also a South Node in Leo, but what I've seen in my past lives is typically like past lives around being like royalty or being in like leadership somehow. And then something somehow happens. And there's basically this wound of like, oh, if I really step into leadership, something bad is going to happen. I'm going to take myself out or I'm going to hurt other people or whatever. So then that's where the South Node is so insightful for healing because it's we can see if like these patterns really resonate from this life or if they resonate from past lives. And what I love doing when I put family charts together is I can see if they have past life connections because if that's it, they have the same sign. So if you have, South Node in Leo, and then, I don't know, your child is like a Leo sun, and then puts it together, and I'm like, oh, well, that's it. You have past lives where you're probably parent, child, and that Leo lifetime, basically. So that's what people say when we say the nodes.
Gotcha.
And then Chiron, also really insightful, and I don't think gets enough credit, and because it's one of our biggest soul wounds. So Chiron is basically the wounded healer, and it's a wound that typically stems from a past life. Then it's reinforced in our early lifetime, so it's like getting in there, and then we overcome it, or people don't. But if you overcome it, then that becomes your medicine for the rest of the world.
Mm.
And when I'm working with other healers, that's where I look at their healer blueprint. It's like Chiron really tells me, like, this is the medicine that you're meant to bring to other people. So that was super interesting because I told you this when we were connecting. We're born 4 days apart of the same year.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah, I know. So it's like our chart is literally like all the same, except it's in different places. So you have Chiron in Cancer, and then like I have Chiron in Cancer as well, but yours is in the 11th house, mine is in the 7th house. So Chiron in Cancer oftentimes will indicate a mother wound because Cancer is related to the mother line. And it's oftentimes also a wounding around being nurtured and around belonging. And basically, that's it. The whole life story is just like, I don't belong, I don't fit in, yada, yada, right? But for you, it's like in the 11th house. So it's probably like your social groups that have really brought this out and feeling maybe like sisterhood wounds or feeling like you never really quite belong, all of that, right? For me, it's in my 7th house. So it's relationships that bring out like my one-on-one, like my romantic relationships, where it just always brings out those inner childhood wounds.
No, that totally tracks. Especially looking at like adolescence into early 20s and that feeling of like being there, but not being in it, and never really feeling like I knew my place, a lot of like core rejection, a lot of like fundamentally changing pieces of myself to try to assimilate, try to fit in while also trying to like assert who I am, and a lot of uncertainty in like how I'm supposed to show up in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say especially like mid 20s and younger.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so that tracks with like the Chiron timeline. And I think that's so interesting. So the ruler of Cancer is the moon. And so this is where we have another just kind of more involved level of astrology is then we can look at what planets rule these and how it adds another layer. And so your moon being in Pisces, you are someone who's very like, I always explain it as like energetically porous. Like you just like take on, it's like a little emotional, energetic sponge. And my daughter's actually a Pisces rising. And it's like absolutely wild to me. I can see like who she's hanging out with based on like her mannerisms, how she talks, the things that she likes, all of that. So I can see how, like you're saying, that kind of like trying to find yourself and like reinventing yourself to like fit in and mold. Like Pisces is really good at doing that, but then it's the thing, you lose yourself. So it makes sense that that's it, to try to compensate for the Chiron wound of not belonging. Well, then that moon layer of being like a little energetic sponge and chameleon kind of like fits in and they go together,
Okay, what else? Where do we go from here?
I know, right? My nose is so itchy. I was like, I don't know, girl, you got some ancestors. You got like someone's coming around. That's like my sign for when there's like spirits around.
Ooh, okay. Well, let me know what comes up.
Yeah, no, if it comes in after. Yeah.
It's probably my baby. My baby tries to talk to anyone who will listen. So
That's so funny. What gets you like tripped up when you were like, oh, it's just like, it gets like astrology. It's overwhelming, right? Like,
I think, gosh, it's like one of those things like I don't even know what questions to ask because it's all so new and I'm trying to figure it out. But I think part of it's also just like the language, like you said, like what is the big three? What's the rising? What does this mean? And how do they relate to each other? And so when you're doing a reading with someone, like how are you taking these like little pieces of information and applying it to like the bigger scale of life? Or even more specifically, like you said, you work with a lot of business owners and healers. Like, how are you taking this information to be like you said, like, here's the roadmap, here's the blueprint, here's the guidebook, it's all right here. Like, where would you go next to kind of making all of this be super tangible?
Yeah. So I like download a lot of like my frameworks and things. And instead I really make my readings super specific to like what the person is kind of like dealing with at the time. Or that's it. If it's, they're just more of a general reading, typically there's still like yeah, the way that I work, it's always like, I'm like, I need to know kind of like what you're coming for. Like, what do you want? Right. So let's say, for example, let's say my client is like, oh, I keep self-sabotaging. Like anytime I like, I start getting some momentum, then I like freeze and I like don't. So we want to look at that. Well, that's where we look to the 12th house about our subconscious patterns and things that we don't necessarily realize that we're doing. So then I'm like, okay, well, your 12th house, that's where we're looking at that like self-sabotage kind of like wound, right? So that's typically how I work. If someone has a very specific question. And if not, then that's it. I've created frameworks. So my healer blueprint readings, it has very specific placements. And I do it in 3 parts of like, okay, what's your medicine that you're meant to bring for the world? Who are your soul corded clients? And then how do you actually serve them to like bring those two together, right?
Okay, I love that. Can we dive into that? Or is that something we need to prepare for before we're like live on a call?
Yeah. I mean, no, we could definitely have a
Because
look.
I feel like the work that I'm doing has evolved over the years, as it always does, and I feel like it should. But I feel like especially over the last year, 18 months, like there has been so much unraveling and remembering and diving and exploring and getting curious and getting into the depths of myself. And, I have this like very secure knowing with this baby coming in January that it's going to be like before and after. And then like all of these pieces are coming together in the late spring and to really alchemize and like almost catapult into like a whole nother, whether you call it level or evolution or something, in a way that's going to feel very clear, very tangible, very ease filled in 2026. And so I've done a lot of work around this over the past several months, but I would love from an astrological perspective what that looks like and to deeper understand like what I'm going through and what's coming.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I'm not surprised at all that you felt called to, becoming Reiki attuned because when we see people with Chiron in Cancer, I mean, really any of the water signs, not to say that it's only water signs that become healers, but anytime you have someone with like a strong water sign presence, so that's Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio, it's very much of those healing, that intuitive like ability. So I'm not surprised that you felt called to Reiki. But so with Chiron and Cancer, I mean, that tells me that it's like your medicine for the world is really helping others feel safe and accepted and love, teaching them like the strength and like vulnerability, right? Providing that like emotional support, nurturing, even like maybe like ancestral healing and things like that, because it's like Cancer is the sign of like the mother, like the matriarch. So maybe even like maternal line healing, like that type of energy. But so with it being in the 11th house, it really is like a collective kind of thing. So it's like you're really doing these things to help the collective like evolve and expand, right? And I would think probably like group offers and like group communities, because the 11th house is all about it being community. So I feel like your work is probably more you probably feel more pulled to like that one-to-many model rather than like one-on-one. Yeah, that's it. You're like soul corded like clients. That's when I look to the ruler of the 7th house, and it's Aquarius. So you're like your clients that you're meant to work with are, that's it, the black sheeps, like the ones who don't fit in, the innovators, that they're well ahead of their curve. And that's it. They probably, because they've been the black sheep and they've been misunderstood, they've lacked that nurturing and that belonging, right? And like they probably don't let themselves be too vulnerable, because if they do let themselves be vulnerable, well, then they're misunderstood or judged and so on. So that's where your Chiron medicine, really, that's it, becomes medicine for these people, right? The black sheep who never felt seen and held, you can see them because that's it. You also have your placements in Aquarius, but that's it. Also, it's like your Chiron wound. That's why it's so important. Like the way my energy healing teacher explained it, like she was always saying like, you have to like live through it to be able to support other people, right? And to be able to really hold them in that and know what it's like. And so that's why our Chiron journey is so like potent. It's really your own initiation for the journey, but then it becomes your medicine for everybody else.
I think that all totally tracks. And anyone who's been listening to the podcast for a while is like, yep, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I'm like zero surprised that that's it. You already have like community. You're already like running group programs. Like it just
Oh, yeah.
because of that being in your 11th house, because it's the 11th house is those community connections.
Okay. Another phrase that I've heard people bring up recently is Saturn rising or Saturn return.
Saturn
No,
return.
Saturn return.
Yeah.
Yes. What does that mean? It happens like when you're around 30. Yes.
So basically, your Saturn return is when Saturn comes back to the same placement as when you were born. So it happens that's at 30 years. Interestingly enough, people don't like, I don't know, recognize that. But you know, when people say like, oh, you have like a midlife crisis around like 60, and then like people are like, sell their house, sell their cars. Like that's also Saturn again, because it happens again when you're
Yeah.
60. Yeah. So basically, I like to explain, I think Saturn returns get a bad rep because that's it. Everyone's like, oh my God, I got divorced or I had this crazy thing happen. I have to leave my job. Like it is very like kind of like destabilizing. But I think that my interpretation, how I see Saturn is that basically Saturn, because Saturn is a longer like planet. It's not fast. And Saturn rewards like wisdom and putting in the work over time. And so basically this kind of like checkpoint, the way I see it, is everything that's in misalignment for like adulthood just kind of gets brought up to the surface. Because this is the thing. At 29, I think it's like most of us are still living for the shoulds, right? What we've been conditioned to do and think and like go to school for this and do that and all that, right? And so we're living our lives under the shoulds, not really what's soul aligned. So if you're not in soul alignment, Saturn is like, nah, because we got shit to do. Like Saturn knows like the big picture, right? And here we are really into adulthood. And so that's why I think it just kind of gets a bad rep, because most of us in our 20s are not living for ourselves. We're living for others. All of those shoulds, things that we've been conditioned to do. And Saturn is like, we can't bring this. So we need to have kind of like a course correction to align us to the next like level of this journey. And that's why sometimes people are like, oh, my Saturn return was fine. And then I end up talking to them and I'm like, yeah, because that's it. You're already kind of like in alignment. You know, maybe they
Yeah.
hadn't fallen into that conditioning. But it's that everybody else who has a really rough time, it's like, oh, they realize, it's like for me, it's like I was working in an industry that does not align with my core values at all. And it was just like, oh my God, like my whole world basically exploded, because that's it. I wasn't meant to be doing the work that I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be a healer. And so obviously all that had to like crash and burn, right? For me to be like, oh, okay, this isn't the right thing.
Yeah. For context, for anyone familiar with my story, I mean, I had my second daughter. I turned 29. That fall is when I started my health journey that kind of ignited everything, brought me to the world of personal growth and development. I turned 30 right in the first 2 weeks of COVID, and 2 months later started sharing online in what eventually has blossomed into the work that I'm doing today. So, okay, I'm glad that you explained that, because that's kind of what I had inferred just based on reading other people's posts. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. No, that's so exactly me. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And I love that, because that's it. Your Saturn is in your fifth house. Fifth house is like all about, that's it, self-expression, creativity. It's probably like you were like, I'm fucking done being like tired, like scared of what other people will think or say.
Yeah.
I just need to like share, and like speak and like put it out there.
Yes. Yeah. Mine, I could see how going through that Saturn return would be really jarring. Mine was like the most exciting time of my life. It was like someone just kept turning lights on, and I was like uncovering and digging and exploring and stepping in ways that were scary, but also like, hell yes, like this is amazing. This is what I've been waiting for.
Like liberating, right?
Yeah, liberating. That's a really good word.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, that's it. That makes so much sense. Just a fifth house Saturn return. It's just like a very good place to have a Saturn return, because that's it. Fifth house is it's creativity, it's self-expression, it's joy, it's romance, it's kids. It's just like, yeah, it's definitely not someone who had like an eighth house Saturn return. Probably not the same experience, but just necessary, right? Like their soul chose that.
Okay, before we close out this portion of the podcast, any other insights, things you want to touch on about chart reading in general or what you see on mine before we segue?
Well, so I think the one thing, so I didn't touch on this yet, but also an important part to them, other placement that gives a lot of insights is our midheaven. And so that's the really thick line at the top of the chart. It's between the ninth and the 10th house. It says MC. And so your MC is in Taurus. And so the MC is basically, it's your legacy. It's like what you're meant to leave for other people, that legacy work. People often think of it in terms of career and work, but I think it just goes deeper than really just like your career. It's really like your legacy, like what you're meant to leave. Being in Taurus, like that adds another layer. Taurus is all about self-worth. Like Taurus is, that's it. It's also our financial worth. Taurus is tied to money, but it's also tied to our self-worth. And so, I can see how it's like all this is tied together. And again, with your Chiron medicine, like a lot of those woundings really relate to low self-worth, right? And things like that. So it's like I think the legacy, Taurus really likes things to be very tangible. It's like logical in a way. It's like very grounded. Taurus likes like comfort and just doing things, kind of like nicely. And so it's just like bringing this layer of tangibility, making it really like applicable, but really it all just comes down to that more like convicted self-worth. So I think that's another piece to think for you in terms of like, I do include this in like my healer blueprint readings, but just to think of, that's it, like your legacy, I think, is really helping people like increase like their self-worth, right? Because that comes down to everything else.
Yeah. Well, it's like turning inwards to your own self-healing and expansion to be the ripple effect and the leadership and the agents of change that I think a lot of women in this community desire to be. Like, I so identify with like being misunderstood or being a black sheep or like having gone through decades of assimilation and having this like wake up realization of like, this doesn't fit anymore and I'm going insane and it doesn't feel like anyone else around me is having this conversation. Like, that has been a really big conversation in our community recently. And so to say that and then like really rooted into getting grounded, doing like the mind, body, spirit, everything healing, and then like taking that to be the lighthouse, the candle, the flame that then goes forward and is like, the revolutionaries, the trailblazers. And whether that is on a macro scale or whether that is within families, friend groups, relationships, communities, like that's where I really see the women in this community leaning into as we go forward.
I love that. I'm so glad you said that example because it made me think like that's something I see in clients all the time. And even for myself, it's the people who really felt misunderstood, or there's just like this wrongness. It's like your chart always has like the key for it and the explanation and just becomes such a permission slip. Like an example that I love sharing. So I'm a Capricorn moon. And so we don't really like to deal with our emotions because like we put them in a box for later, actually for never. It's just like, no, it's a little bit cold. And before I knew astrology, like there was a point in time I was like, man, like I'm a cold-hearted bee, man. Like I don't cry at things. Like I'm just like really like, things just need to brush off. And then when I saw my chart, I was like, oh no, I'm not actually a cold-hearted bee. I'm just a Capricorn moon. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, of course, I have to like work at being in touch with my emotions now that I know that I can
Right.
in the box. But it was really like I really was like, man, I was like the nurturing gene. It just like, it skipped me, and it was like, I was making it a wrongness. And then I realized in my chart, I was like, oh no. And now that's it. And with my clients, it actually really serves me because that's it. They can tell me about their deepest trauma and hardships. And I like, don't bat an eye. I could stay really grounded and hold them. Right. And I'm not like, oh, damn, that story was really like, touch me. It's like, no, I can stay like even keeled. I'm great in a crisis. I'm like, I'm super chill, I got it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, to really flip the script. So I always say that, like, if there's something about yourself that you really just don't like, or that, as always other people have always made a wrongness and projected, like, you're so this, you're so that. Like, there's a reason for it in your chart, and that's it. It gives you the bigger karmic context.
Yeah. Well, it's just that permission, which sounds like so superficial to feel like we need at this point. But it's like you said, when you go through much of your life being criticized or, you have your self perception in relation to other people, you're like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why am I this way? Why am I this instead of that? And it's like we can sit in so much shame around that. And so this is a tool to be able to be like, oh, that's why. Like, I'm not broken. This is by design. And also, I don't have to drown in it. Like, I can grow in this area. I can move through it. But there's like that rooted purpose as to why it's there in the first place without, weaponizing it against ourselves. Okay, Annie, if someone wants to sit down with you and have you deep dive their chart in the same way that you did mine, can you tell listeners where to find you and what that process would look like?
So everything is on my website. So it's anniebertrand.com. So I have my readings there. I don't actually do regular chart readings, just like general ones. I really only do healer blueprint readings and family readings. But for your readers, I will make an exception. But you have to DM me on Instagram. Okay. But I just like, I have to preface, like It's always from a karmic point of view. It's like, here's why your soul chose this. And like, here's your bigger purpose. It's like, I don't do just like, the readings of like, here are your main strengths,
Yeah. No, but I love that because I think that really lends to so many conversations we're having here recently and is like the perfect segue into what we're going to get into next. But I know a lot of women in this community are at this reckoning place of like, okay, I know my purpose is evolving. I know I'm evolving and are, looking for a little bit of clarity as to what that means and where to go next, right? Like they're kind of in this holding pattern between like really trusting themselves for the first time and also being like, what does this mean? Someone help. So I think actually the unique perspective in medicine you bring to the table is exactly what so many women in this community need. So thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Okay, friends, thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned for part 2 with Annie, where we are going to dive even deeper into the work that she does related to ancestry, families, mother wounds, parent wounds, and beyond. But if you have any further questions from this episode, if anything sparked something from you, feel free to message either one of us. We look forward to hearing from you. Hey friend, I hope this conversation sparked something real in you, something that feels like truth, curiosity, or the courage to keep becoming. If this episode resonated, I'd love for you to share it. Take a screenshot, post it to your stories, or send it to one of your friends. You can always find me over on Instagram at Emily Rushel, where I love continuing these conversations and hearing your takeaways. Truly, your DMs are one of my favorite parts of podcasting, so don't be shy. I'd love to reflect and connect with you over there. I'm so grateful to be surrounded by a community of women who ask hard questions, sit in the discomfort of the unknown, blaze new paths forward, and ultimately come home to their wild and waking selves. See you next week.